So let's begin our study tonight. We're going to look at Jacob. Jacob, of course, is covered from essentially chapter 25 through 35. So we're going to do 10 chapters. I have 14 slides, more than I've ever had. And I have trouble getting through the slides in time. So I'm going to go a little quick. What I hope to do is really just sort of do a quick run through some of the events in Jacob's life. And we'll talk and end up with talking about his character and the things he had to deal with. As we go through the events and the character, we'll pull out some very key points that relate to his life. Now, for me, Jacob I can relate to in many ways. Number one, he's a twin, and I'm a twin. And so, right off, I got something in common with Jacob. But even more so, and I think with Jacob than, say, men like Abraham or Isaac, who were certainly men who were flawed, they had problems in their life. But yet these men showed a devotion to God that sometimes I think we all struggle with. I mean, both of them were in chapter 22, where Abraham offered his son and as a burnt offering, which is a whole complete burnt offering, offered Isaac to God. And Isaac apparently was seemingly willingly obeyed and gave himself over to God in that same event. So as much as I strive to be more like Christ-like and more like Abraham and Isaac in that regard, and even though they were flawed men, I probably relate more to Jacob than I do those two. Jacob has a very tumultuous, difficult past, a very difficult life, not a godly man at all, as we'll see. But then he had a turning point in his life. And God brought him through certain events in his life, and then that turning point which enabled him to change his character, which is a great lesson for you and I. Despite what's in our past, despite the type of things that we've come across and the person we've become in our past, we can change. It's up to each individual. And so we'll look at that as we go through this. I apologize to you. They've seen many of these slides before, although I have changed some things, so it's never the same thing each time. Let's begin in chapter 25 as we look at Jacob's life. In chapter 25, here, of course, is the pronouncement of the birth to Isaac and Rebekah. They're twins, Jacob and Esau. And as we know, the firstborn is Esau, but yet who's grabbing at the heel of Esau coming through into this world, into this life, is Jacob. And the name Jacob means supplanter, someone who is trying to get his way over someone else's way. And, of course, that is characteristic of Jacob in his life. And ultimately, well, let's read chapter 25, verses 19. Beginning verse 19, and we'll read down through, I think I just want to go right now through 24. So now, these are the records of the generation of Isaac, Abraham's son. Abraham became the father of Isaac, and Isaac was 40 years old when he took Rebekah, the daughter of Bethuel, the Aramean of Padan Aram, the sister of Laban, the Aramean, to be his wife. Isaac prayed to the Lord on behalf of his wife because she was barren. And the Lord answered him and Rebekah, and his wife conceived. Let me stop there for a moment. It's interesting that not only is Sarah barren for 90 years, but so is now Rebekah, the one that Isaac loves and is with. She's for 20 years is barren without a child. And another interesting point, we'll get a little further, Jacob's love, his first wife, is really his second wife, but his first love, which of course is Rachel, and she was barren for a number of years. Why would God keep these ladies barren? Why does the scripture show that they were without child for so many years? Show God's sovereignty. Especially we see over and over, these people, we see with Sarah and Hagar, especially we'll see with Rachel, and Rachel tries to buy the mandrakes from one of Leah's sons, Reuben, or Isaac, with giving Leah opportunity to lay with her husband, Jacob, and as a result of that, she becomes pregnant again. We'll talk more about that. But see, they were trying to manipulate things to get their way, and God's sovereignty said that ain't going to happen. I'm in charge. And so God took control. And so these ladies are barren for a purpose. So we can understand God's sovereignty is involved, that He is the one that determines what, when, and how. And ultimately, we see that in this lesson here. Let's finish as where we leave off. Verse 21, or 22. Okay, so verse 21. Isaac prayed to the Lord on behalf of his wife because she was barren, and the Lord answered him, and Rebekah his wife conceived. But the children struggled together within her and said, if it is so, why am I this way? So she went to the Lord to inquire of the Lord. The Lord said to her, 2 nations are in your womb, and 2 people will be separated from your body, and 1 people will be stronger than the other. The older shall serve the younger. And when her days to be delivered were fulfilled, behold, there were twins in her womb. So let's notice it back in verse 22. My passage, New American Standard Bible, says that the twins struggled in her womb. I think King James has, what's King James have? I looked at it earlier, but now I forgot. What do you have? Struggle, huh? You got American Standard? Well, you're really with it. King James said. 22, but the children struggled within her. Huh? Together. Okay, well, there's another passage different. But anyway, here's the point. We don't understand the struggling unless you go back to the original meaning, the original Hebrew. And it refers to not just a struggle, but it refers to crushing, C-H-R-U-S-H-I-N-G, crushing each other. They were literally crushing each other. And to such a point that she was in such agony, she couldn't understand why she was having this difficulty. She inquired to God, and what's God's response to it? 2 nations are in your womb. Which 2 nations are those? Edom and Israel, right? 2 brothers battling for throughout all their lives. 2 people will be separated from your body. 1 shall be stronger than the other. And older shall serve the younger. Of course, that comes to fruition, as we will see. Here, as Jacob comes out of the womb, he is supplanting, trying to take the first place in the birth. Why is that significant? What's so important about being firstborn? My brother and I are 8 minutes apart. We argue about who's firstborn. My mom says I was firstborn. My dad says he was firstborn. My mom was there. My dad wasn't, so I'm believing her. The doctor said he was firstborn. So he has all rights to the firstborn legally. Okay? And in olden ancient days, the right of the firstborn got double the share of inheritance. But that's not the important thing. The right of the firstborn was the spiritual leader of the family. When Dad died, who took over the spiritual leadership? The firstborn. But not just that family. If Dad is the spiritual leader of his family, including his younger brothers, then when Dad's son, the firstborn, takes over spiritual leader, not just of his own family, but of his father's family and his father's family. He's the spiritual leader of the entire family. It's a big deal to be the firstborn. At least it was then. It wasn't so much in our family. So this firstborn comes out right immediately. Notice in verses, continue on to verse 25. Now, the first came forth red all over, hairy garment, like a hairy garment, and they named him Esau, and afterwards a brother came forth, and his hand holding on Esau's heel, so his name was called Jacob, so the supplanter. And Isaac was 60 years old when she gave birth to them. And when the boys, think about that, 60 years old. I'm 61. When the boys grew up, Esau became a skillful hunter, a man in the field. Jacob was a peaceful man living in tents. Now Isaac loved Esau because he had a taste for game, but Rebekah loved Jacob. Let me stop there for a moment. There's going to be significant problems in the life of Isaac and Rebekah in their marriage relationship, specifically related to children. Do we not have problems in our lives, in our marriage relationship, that oftentimes relate to finances and children? That's a common thing. But in this case, we can be pretty harsh with both Rebekah and Isaac in this relationship, because it seems that Isaac chooses Esau and Rebekah chooses Jacob. Why would Rebekah choose Jacob? God told her that the older will serve the younger. She knew that Jacob was the one that had the birthright. Isaac naturally would assume the firstborn, as the birthright. There's a natural division that came about as a result of the way they were born. And we'll continue on. And so now, Isaac loved Esau because he had taste for game, but Rebekah loved Jacob. When Jacob had cooked stew, Esau came from the field and was famished. And Esau and Jacob, please let me, I want to go to my next slide. When Jacob had cooked stew, Esau came from the field and was famished. And Esau said to Jacob, please let me have a swallow of the red stuff here, stew, for I am famished. Therefore, his name was called Edom, meaning red. Edom means red. But Jacob said, first sell me your birthright. Esau said, behold, I am about to die, so what use is this birthright to me? Jacob said, first swear to me. And so he swore to him, and he sold his birthright to Jacob. Then Jacob gave Esau bread and lentil stew, and he ate and drank and rose and went on his way. Thus Esau despised his birthright. He despised his birthright. To despise it means he took it as worthless. The birthright, which he would be the spiritual head of the family, the birthright, which gave him a double inheritance, a portion of the inheritance, he took it as worthless because his immediate gratification was more important. His immediate gratification, does that sound like anything that we struggle with? My immediate desire, my immediate need was more important than what my entire life is in front of me. That was who Esau was. That was his character. And so he was so hungry that that immediate need became more important than being the spiritual leader of the family, than being the having the double share of importance. What good is that to me if I'm to die? Was he really about to die? I don't know, maybe. I mean, certainly he's able to get to the table. So, well, in his heart, it felt that way. Look very quickly, Hebrews chapter 12, verse 15 through 16. Notice in Hebrews chapter 12 what it says in verse 15. See to that no one comes short of the grace of God, that no root of bitterness spring up cause trouble, and by it many be defiled, that there be no immoral or godly person like Esau, who sold his own birthright for a single meal. And we continue to the next verse, we see more about Esau. For you know that even afterwards, when he desired to inherit the blessings, he was rejected, for he found no place for repentance, though he sought it with tears. We'll get to that in a moment. His immediate gratification overtook what was prudent and what was his long-term needs. We have similar difficulties. Overeating, anybody like me, eat more than they should because it just tastes good. All right? We don't need it, but it takes over. Our smoking, well, we're going to have a great lesson today from Brother Lance on drinking today. I hope we pay attention. I think he's going to approach it a little differently than what we might have heard in the past. I'm looking forward to that. Our immoral or sexual relations with others, all these immediate needs can take over our senses, our brain, what's smart, what we know is right, and we do what's wrong because we want that gratification at that moment. This was Jacob, all associated with immediate gratification, but had lasting consequences. And so, Jacob, switch the TV back. So, so Jacob, Esau sells his birthright. He sees it as worthless, and then we move forward. We see chapter 27. We'll skip chapter 26. It's not directly related. We looked at 26 when we talked about Isaac, the quarrel over the wells a week ago. But Jacob here in chapter 27, now with his mother's help, takes the blessing that was intended for Esau. His mother overheard Isaac wanting to bless Esau. Now understanding, the blessing is not the same as the birthright. The blessing is different. The blessing is, and we see it especially look at chapter 49, which we won't get to today. but you see specifically where the spiritual leader of the family provides a blessing for his children or whomever he desires. And the blessing gives that person a field of their destiny. They are blessed in such a way they know and have confidence in where they are headed. And as a result of that, the blessing was something that was greatly desired because it would give a feel, a direction of where they would be in the future, what prosperity they might have, or what curses they might have to deal with if it wasn't a blessing. And so we see in chapter 27, Esau wanted to bless his, or Isaac wanted to bless his son Esau. Rebekah, the wife, overheard it, and instead manipulated Jacob to manipulate Isaac to get the blessing that was intended for Esau. Both are wrong. Both, though, are doing, actually unwittingly, God's will. What was the will of God? The older shall serve the younger. How is that going to occur? Not only does he get the birthright, he gets the blessing. God is using, even those whose hearts are not aligned with his will, he's aligning it towards it. And so, in their own manipulative ways, God uses that to get his will accomplished. Notice chapter 27, verse 27. Isaac, well, I don't think I'm going to start here. Isaac is being tricked by Jacob, is wearing the clothes of a hunter, putting on hairy arms from animal skins and such, and he is tricked into giving the blessing. As a result of that, for time we won't read all the passages here. In this chapter, Esau is distraught, and what had Esau done in chapter 26? Remember, he married 2 women. They're Hittite women, right, from the land of Canaan. And his marriage was happy. Did it make his parents pleasing? No, his parents were very distressed that he married into the women of the land. They were very unhappy with that. And what's interesting is after Esau was tricked, or Isaac was tricked from the blessing intended for Esau, Esau gets very bitter, weeps very loudly, and he does what? He says, I'm going to kill him. And Dad dies. Because apparently Dad felt like he wasn't going to last much longer. Couldn't see. Apparently he felt like he wasn't going to last much longer. And so when Dad dies, I'm going to get what I want. And I'm going to kill Jacob. The result of that is, of course, Rebekah sends Jacob away. And she, even there, manipulates Isaac to send Jacob back to the homeland, back to Haran, the region of Padan-aram, which he goes back and gets that in a moment. But what does Esau do in retaliation? Notice in chapter 28, verse 9. Starting verse 8. So Esau saw that the daughters of Canaan displeased his father Isaac because they sent Jacob away to marry someone from the homeland. And Esau, in verse 9, went to Ishmael and married besides the wives that he had, which is Mahalath and the daughter of Ishmael. So he married a third wife, Abraham's son, the seer of Nebaioth. What it says about Esau, who despised his birthright, who thought it to be worthless, what it says about Esau is that he took, in spite of his parents' desires, he went and married another Hittite woman. What it says about Esau is he was unfit to do the will of God. His heart was not right from the very beginning. And so God understood this, and from the very beginning, he said that the older Esau would serve the younger. And so Isaac is Jacob is on his way to the homeland. Gets to the homeland in chapter 29. He meets Rachel at the well. It's interesting, we think of Jacob as this weak mother, what do you call a mama's boy kind of guy. He's pretty strong. He gets to the well. If you read the passage, the well is something that requires several men. They all gather together at an appointed time to water the sheep. And the several men are waiting for the others to arrive. And one reason is because that cover for the well is quite heavy, and not one person can do it. But here comes Rachel, and she's pretty. And when a pretty girl comes around, what's the guy going to do? He's going to show off, ain't he? And so what does Jacob do? He lifts that stone and feeds the flock. He's showing off. She was impressed. And it's interesting that she runs home in chapter 29. I want to point out verse 13. And so when Laban heard, this is her brother Laban, family of Isaac, of Rebekah. And so when Laban heard the news of Jacob, his sister's son, she ran to meet him and he ran to meet him and embraced him and kissed him and brought him to the house, and he related to Laban all the things. So he goes to Laban's house and he meets the two daughters. He already met Rachel, now he meets the older daughter, Leah. What happens between these two? Jacob's in love with Rachel. Oh man, I'll do anything. Interesting thing, Jacob travels all the way to Padan-Aram with nothing. Nothing but a staff. He sent him over to find a wife, and he did not send a dowry with him. And they had it. They didn't send him anything. He gets there with just a staff. And so he agrees to work for Laban for 7 years for the right to marry Rachel. That's the dowry that he's given. And so he works for 7 years. After the 7 years, what happens? He doesn't get to marry right away Rachel. Dad says it's not right for you to marry the younger. The older is the one that needs to be married first. It's so interesting that the younger son, Jacob, deceived his brother out of his birthright and his blessing, is now being deceived by his uncle Laban. And when he wanted to marry the younger, he says, no, you got to marry the older. What Jacob sowed, what he reaped, he's now sowing. There's a great lesson there. You reap what you sow. What Jacob reaped, that is the younger taking advantage of the older, he's now being sowed, which is he's now having the same principle being thrown back on him. And so he ends up marrying Leah. When he discovers that the next morning, I won't go into all why, he discovers that the next morning, I think I might have this slide. Let's see. Discovers that the next morning, he again negotiates with Laban his love for Rachel so much as to go ahead and marry her. They married that same week, but he negotiates another 7 years of labor, of service. And so he's in servitude to Laban for 14 years, married to 2 women. And these 2 women give him children, right? They give him, first off, the first 4 were Leah's children, Reuben, Simeon, and Levi, and Judah. And then Leah is barren for a period of time. And so Rachel is still barren, and so she gives her handmaid to her husband Jacob. I've got all these names here. Her husband Jacob, and they have 2 children. And then, so Leah is barren now, and so she gives her handmaid Bilhah to her husband Jacob, and they have 2 children. And then, as we mentioned earlier, Rachel intends to buy the opportunity to be with her husband, the mandrakes from Reuben, and ultimately the mandrakes are aphrodisiac type of thing, intended to entice the experience with them. And ultimately, though, God would not be manipulated, and God opened the womb of Leah, and she gave 2 more children. But finally, God remembered Rachel, and she had the son Joseph. Later on, she had Benjamin. But there's one more child that's not in the picture. This is not a son. It's the daughter. Leah actually has 7 children. 6 boys, 1 daughter. Remember the daughter's name? 9. Right. And she becomes very significant. I can't remember if I have a slide on that or not. Yeah, I don't. But I'll bring it up later, yeah. So here are the children of Jacob, the sons of Jacob. And then after Jacob goes back to Laban, and he says, I've served my 14 years, I'm ready to go. Let me take my wife and my family and leave. And he's got nothing to take with him. No wealth. And of course Laban intends to manipulate him and trick him to stay long, of which he can then earn some wealth. And so basically some of the sheep that ultimately would be given over to Laban or to Jacob, and he would accumulate wealth, and that's what he did. He accumulated through the providence of God much, much, much wealth. Servants and livestock, to the point that he served another 6 years. 20 years he's away from his mom that loves him, that manipulated him. 20 years. He finally gets back. Mom is gone. Mom's not there anymore. Mom sends him away for a short time to find a wife, and he never sees Mom. Pretty sad when you look at it. Finally, after Jacob accumulated his wealth, God's providence allowed him to accumulate wealth. He sees a change in attitude between Laban and his people and Jacob and his people. Laban is no longer welcome because there's a degree of prosperity that is given to Jacob and not to Laban. And you know what happens when some people prosper and others don't get the same degree of prosperity, right? Degree of jealousy that comes into play. We oftentimes get concerned, jealous about what's happening with so-and-so. Why is that me? You know, we focus too much, and that's what Laban was doing, focus too much on what was happening to Jacob. We need to focus on what's happening in our lives. Stop worrying about what's happening in everyone else's lives. We're supposed to rejoice when others have reason to rejoice and weep when others weep. We're not supposed to be envious of what is occurring and the blessings that occur in other lives. I think it's somewhat human nature that we do that, but we need to overcome that. So, because of this situation now, Jacob takes his family and sneaks away without telling Laban. Laban then finds out a few days later he's been shearing the sheep, hard work. They have to go away. They're busy. They don't know what's going on. And Jacob takes the family and leaves. Travels about 40 miles away, and Laban finally occurs and catches up to him. It's interesting if you look in chapter, when he does catch up to him, in chapter 31, notice in verse 42. If the God of my father, the God of Abraham, the fear of Isaac, had not been for me, surely now he would have sent me away empty-handed. God has seen my affliction and toil my hands, so he rendered judgment last night. I apologize, that's not the verse I'm looking for. I'm looking for verse 55. Verse 55, early in the morning, this is after Laban catches up. Laban they negotiate a covenant between them that they would not cause harm to one another. And then early in the morning, verse 55, Laban arose, kissed his sons and his daughters, and blessed them. Then Laban departed and returned to his place. Who did he not kiss? Jacob. You know, from the very beginning, we see between Jacob's interaction with Laban, the very beginning, Jacob kisses him, welcomes him. At the very end, there's no relationship. That's what oftentimes the materialistic view of life will do to us. It takes away a relationship. When we focus on the wrong thing. That's what happened with Laban. And so they part ways. Jacob is on his way home to see his brother. It's been 20 years. Jacob gets home, or is on his way home, near home. He sends a messenger ahead messenger returns and tells them that Esau is coming to meet him. But he doesn't say he's coming. He's coming with what? You might remember, how many men is he coming with? 400 men. Now that would scare me. Esau's coming with 400 men. What did Esau, the last thing that Esau said he was going to do after his father died to Jacob? Kill him. Jacob was afraid. Very afraid. One of the things that's interesting that I skipped over, when Jacob was on his way to Padan Aram, in the area, in the land of Bethel, he had a dream. Jacob's ladder called, where the angels were sending and descending. And in that dream, God promised to protect him. But one of the things that's very, very interesting about that, if we look in the dream, chapter 28, is that God promises to protect him and to bless him. And in verse 21, and then verse 20, after Jacob awakes from the dream, it says in verse 20 that Jacob made a vow. A vow is not the same as an oath. A vow has a condition to it. Jacob made a vow saying, if God will be with me and will keep me on the journey that I take, and will give me food to eat and garments to wear, and I return to my father's house in safety, then the Lord will be my God. It was a conditional agreement. This says a lot about Jacob and his relationship with God. Abraham walked with God even though he struggled in his life throughout his life. He still walked with God in the pathway that God desired him to go. Jacob did not have a relationship with God. He was fearful. Notice in verse 16, chapter 28. Then Jacob awoke from sleep and said, surely the Lord is in this place, and I did not know it. He was afraid and said, how awesome is this place? There is none other than the house of God. This shall be the gates of heaven. This is Jacob's probably first encounter with God. And he makes a vow. If God will do this, then he will be my God. Isn't that how a lot of people treat God? God, if you do this for me, I promise I'll do this for you. You'll be my God. That's how we often treat God. I expect something from you, God, and then I'll give you something back. It's not how it works. So on his way back, he has this struggle. He sends his family ahead of him in two groups. First group from Leah's family down to Rachel's family last. How would you like to be in that first group? The intent is that if Esau's coming to destroy them, destroy that family and the other family can get away. There's some logic to it. But I wouldn't want to be in the first group, would you? Jacob then goes to the other side of the river by himself alone for the night. And he struggles the entire night. He wrestles with a man, the passage says in chapter 32. He wrestles with a man. But really, what's occurring here is Jacob is wrestling with who he is, with his character, the deceiver, who deceived and manipulated his way of life. Jacob was a very selfish man, and he struggled with who he was. He's coming to approach his brother. He is fearful of his life and his family's life, and he's coming to a point in time in which this is bringing him to a point to recognize what got him where he is now. His selfish, deceptive, manipulative ways. That's how he got where he is now. And he's come to terms with this. And so he wrestles with God, says a man. But he demands a blessing from this man, from God. And the blessing is given to him in chapter 32. We won't read it for time's sake. I'll leave it there. I summarized it for you. But it says in verse 28. Verse 27. So he said to him, what is your name? He said, Jacob. And he said, your name shall no longer be Jacob, but Israel. For you have striven with God and men and have prevailed. Jacob struggled with who he was, and he struggled with his relationship with God. And as a result, he came out on the other side of this struggle a changed person. Never again does Jacob manipulate others. Never again does he seek his own selfish desires. After this point in time, he is a changed person because he has a right relationship with God. What will a right relationship with God do with you and I? It will change our lives. If we put God first, our life will be completely different than it is in the past. We change. God didn't change. But God has the ability, power to help us change through His Word. It changed who Jacob was, and he's now referred to, or actually, you really don't call him Israel throughout the text anymore. He's still called Jacob. The reference to Israel is who he is, but it's his lineage, his nation shall come from him, is Israel. He's a changed man. We know that because in chapter 34, the rape of Dinah, they're in the land of Shechem, and Dinah is raped by, first off, Dinah is where she's not supposed to be. Chapter 34, I'm running out of time, she's not where she's supposed to be. And ultimately, she is raped. Jacob's reaction to that is not one of anger, one of passivity, very passive. But the brothers took it extremely angry. They negotiate a truce, which would require the people in the land of Shechem to be circumcised. As a result of that, Simeon and Levi lead the way, killing all the men, and then looting the town and taking the booty, the property, including the women and children, to be their own. And Jacob was upset. They took the law into their own hands. They brought shame upon him. In addition to that, we see that Jacob's a changed man because Reuben, the oldest son, after Leah dies, after Rachel dies, her handmaid, Bilhah, as Reuben does the handmaid, he takes him as his own. He has a relationship with her. That's an assault on Jacob. And so when you look at chapter 49 at the blessings given, who does not get blessings? Reuben doesn't get a blessing. Simeon doesn't get a blessing. And Levi doesn't get a blessing because of their reaction to events in which Jacob didn't react in the same way. He was a changed man. When we look about the difference between who Jacob was and who Israel is, the account is vital for the people of Israel. As they're getting ready to go into the land of Israel, it's vital for them to understand who Israel is. And they now understand this wrestling with God led to them being the nation. We won't look at all the different obituaries for Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. But if you were to contrast them, Genesis 25, verse 8, it speaks about Abraham who died in a ripe old age, an old man satisfied with life, was gathered to his people. And look at the comparison to Isaac, Genesis chapter 35, verse 29. It says, gathered to his people, an old man of ripe age. And then we look at what Jacob says to Pharaoh when he goes into Egypt many years later, Genesis 47, verse 9, saying to the Pharaoh, the years of my sojourning are 130 years. Few and unpleasant have been the years of my life, nor have they attained the years that my fathers lived during the days of their sojourn. Jacob had a very difficult life, most of which he brought upon himself. So difficult for many of us to live a Christian life. Jacob struggled to live a godly life. I relate to Jacob in many ways because I still struggle. But Jacob finally turned himself to God, turned towards God. We often struggle. We have a difficult life. Job 14, verse 1. Man who is born of woman is a few days in trouble. It is a difficult life. It always has been and always will be. This is not the life we strive for. The life we strive for is the eternal life of God, where all peace and passes surpasses understanding. Jacob was a selfish man. His name means supplanter. Give me one moment. I told you I'm never on time. His name indicates that he succeeded only at the expense of others. He took advantage of his hungry twin. He tricked his father for the blessing of the older twin. He was an expert at swindling others. He was an expert at being selfish. Some of us are experts at being selfish. We're good at it. Selfishness is the way the world is. We witness far more of the prodigal son leaving fathers than we do fathers forgiving their sons. We witness far more people do whatever it takes to get ahead, to backstab, cheat, to mistreat others, to look out for numero uno. We witness more people treat others as tools to get what they want in their life as people who need help, rather than people who need help. Jacob was a selfish man. He had great fear. He knew worry. He had to flee his home to fear Esau. He lived 20 years away from his home when coming to meet with, he was afraid of 400 men. But yet, it's interesting that Jacob went ahead of the two families, the two that were in front of him. He overcame his fear, and he met Esau first, even with the 400 men, after he wrestled with who he was with God. When Esau met him, they ran together and embraced each other and kissed each other, much like the father and the prodigal son. It takes tremendous power to overcome fear. We all have things we fear: public speaking, making a mistake in life, looking foolish, confronting someone about a personal problem, our relationship with God. We all have things we fear, but when the Lord is on my side, I will not fear. What can man do to me? Jacob was weak. He appeared spiritually weak and morally weak. He allowed his mother to talk him into deceiving his father. Am I on track? Oh, there we go. Thank you. He was morally weak. He allowed his mother to deceive him, to talk him into deceiving his father. He appeared idolatrous when he built a pillar to God in chapter 28. He appeared ignorant when he offered God his allegiance in exchange for a safe passage back to Canaan. If you do this, I'll do that. He appeared foolish when he believed that he had seen the face of God in chapter 32. He appeared insensitive when he ranked his family in order of value of their lives, putting Leah's family first, and then Leah's handmaid Zilpah, and then Bilhah, and then Rachel. He appeared unfair when he substituted in chapter 48, when he substituted Manasseh, Ephraim, and the blessing we didn't get to. None of these qualities are admirable, but God never lost faith in Jacob, ever. He never loses faith in us. He's still waiting for us. God aims for perfection. Matthew 5:48, you are perfect as your heavenly Father is perfect. But he recognizes our weakness and our humanness. In Romans 3:10, none are righteous, not one. In verse 12, there are none who do good, not even one. Verse 23, for all fall short of the glory of God. And so God sent his Son so that we can have a relationship with him. Last slide, we'll close. We all have struggles to overcome. All of us. Relationships, friends, jobs, school, parents, kids, money. All of us have struggles to overcome. Life's difficult. As a Christian, we're promised persecution. 2 Timothy chapter 3, verse 12. Our suffering, though, is an opportunity to imitate Christ. 1 Peter chapter 2, verse 20-21. Christ took on suffering that you and I don't even understand. He took on what we deserved. He took on suffering that we could never fathom because he took it in our stead. Paul suffered and he asked for the thorn of the flesh to be removed, and his answer was, my grace is sufficient for you. Brethren, friends, God's grace is sufficient for us in this life. God refused to give up on Jacob, and he will refuse to give up on you and I if we continue to strive toward him and will grow closer to him. Avoid situations that make life difficult and make it unfaithful. If you struggle with something in your life that separates you from God, avoid that something as much as you